Like I said, you're a lot smarter than me, and so this is awesome that it worked out the way it did. No, this is so cool. So as you developed this model and started talking to the other co-working space owners, like, were they hesitant? Were they like, I don't know if I want to give up that kind of revenue, or what was kind of the take on that?
Yeah, it was really interesting. So before this, what we pivoted from was software to manage a space like your old space. So the billing and the scheduling and that was hard to sell because there were lots of ways to solve that problem that didn't require like the cost of our platform.
Right.
But as co-working and flexible workspaces grew, there's a lot of empty space, and kind of like an airplane, the inventory is perishable. If it's empty for the day and you didn't sell it, you make no money.
You didn't make money. Yeah.
So for us, our proposition was, hey, you have empty space. Let us fill it. If we fill it, give us a cut. And if it's full, then don't put it on our platform. And that was actually so much easier to sell. And it was like one of those light bulb moments where I was like, oh, wait, this is so much easier to sell than what we were trying to sell before.
Hey, welcome back to the show. And if you're like me, you probably have used co-working spaces before, but not like this. We're going to dive into Sam's business here. Sam, who are you and what do you do?
Hi, Todd. I'm Sam. I'm the co-founder and I'm the CEO of a company called DeskPass. I'm in Chicago. I'm Chicago-based, but our company is a global solution. And essentially what we do is we work with individuals and companies, and we've built this awesome technology platform that allows them to find and book space at co-working spaces. So desks for the day, meeting rooms if you need a meeting room for an hour or for a day, private offices. And we make it really easy to find these spaces and book these spaces and allow companies and teams to administer that.
I love it. I mean, a lot of people have used a co-working space before, but what's different about what you're doing and what makes it unique? Who's your avatar?
First of all, I'd say you'd be surprised, man. I have the Uber test, and I always ask my Uber driver, have you heard of they ask me what I do, and I say co-working, and that's my North Star. And I would say we're like above 50%, but not much more above 50%. So still a lot of, maybe your people listening to this have, I buy that. But,
interesting.
I think, most people have heard of WeWork, right? Today there's more people who search for the word WeWork than co-working on the internet, right?
Is that right?
It is true. And there are tens of thousands of really fantastic local workspaces that are often closer to where you live and work than you might realize. And what we do is, instead of having to commit to one of those spaces or have a membership to one of those spaces, we have this network and an app that you can use the whole network of spaces on demand. So if you need a desk by your house because you got to pick up your kid from daycare later in the day and you don't want to miss traffic, we can help you find that space and then book it just for a day. So instead of having a membership to one space, you have a network of thousands of workspaces that you can use for what you need, when you need, where you need.
Shut up. Okay, I get it. So you're not actually the real estate owner of all the spaces. You're actually kind of a broker between, hey, if you're part of DeskPass, you can get a spot in almost any co-working space around the world.
Yeah, you can kind of think of us as booking.com for office space.
Interesting.
But it's all pay as you go and it's all on demand. So instead of committing to a monthly membership or a lease, you can kind of get exactly what you need, exactly when you need it.
Okay, that's awesome. That's really cool.
Thanks.
Okay.
We're trying.
Dude, no, that's a way better model, not having to pony up on all the real estate.
I've been in this business for over 15 years. I opened the first co-working space in Chicago, and I've seen really the industry and the world change. And at the beginning, you either had to sign a lease or own the building. And it's actually really interesting as there's more empty space and opportunity. There's a lot more these co-working and flexible workspaces popping up
Yeah.
in much more flexible ways than traditional leases. But yeah, it's nice
Right.
to be the marketplace and not necessarily own 10,000 leases.
Oh my gosh, dude, that's so awesome. All right. I love this. So your traditional avatar, are they people that are like, are they traveling to a city and they got to host some meetings and so they're going to do it that way? Are they people that are working out of their home and need a place every once in a while? Like, what are you looking like?
Yeah, it really depends. I mean, we kind of sell to two people. We sell to individuals, and then we'll sell to the companies that they work for, right? Individuals, the use cases, it really varies, but often it's like right now, post-COVID, lots of meeting rooms. So I have a meeting with a client, I have a sales meeting, I want to bring my team together for a day, and I don't need an office, I just need a workspace on demand. So we see a lot of folks in sales. We see a lot of folks that just like are part of a creative team or a team that needs to get together. We see more and more in as an alternative, as I think as more and more individuals and people just have the ability to work from home or not have to go to the office, they're realizing that the home is not always the best place. We actually we have a big customer. I saw an email this morning and they were talking about how he was like, it was an email to his boss, but also to us because we're the platform that supports the space. And he's like, I have four daughters and they're loud. And I go to Starbucks and it's loud. And I go to McDonald's and it's loud. Please help me. I need a quiet space to focus.
That's awesome. Okay, so that's your avatar. I love it. No, this is really cool. And you're global. So you've got relationships with co-working spaces all over the world. And so a member of DeskPass can find their way into pretty much anywhere.
Correct. Yeah, what I found is like the workspace that I love and inspires me, it might be a lot different than you. And also the notion of like what a project I'm working on, what the weather's like today, is there traffic, like are all things that might change what is the appropriate location and spot for me today. So we try to give this really expansive network that you get to pick where you get your best work done.
I love it. All right. So now I told you ahead of time, prior to this turning the recorder on here, I made a go at building a co-working space like over 10 years ago, around 10 years ago-ish. And it was just too early in the specific target market I was going to. This is so unique. Looking back at the way you've been developing over the last 15 years, did you start assuming that was the model and then tweak it to do this? Or have you always been smarter than me and just thought that this is the smarter way to do this?
I don't know. You're still pretty smart. I'm gonna say I'm lucky and right place, right time. My story basically is before DeskPass, I founded a digital branding agency, so like a design technology shop. And
love it.
I was traveling a lot for work, and I was in New York, and basically blew a big kickoff call because my internet sucked and my phone service sucked, and my colleague was like, "Bro, you gotta figure something else." But I'm a nice hipster and I needed to find a cafe nearby because I thought that was the only solution. And I realized that that didn't work very well either. So I came across one of the first co-working spaces, first 300 or so co-working spaces in the whole world. No one knew what this concept was, including me.
Right.
And I loved it. And I solved all my problems and I fell in love with the community of people there. And I thought, who's doing this in Chicago? And the answer was nobody. There were no workspaces in Chicago. So my partner in the agency and I opened the first co-working space in Chicago.
Nice.
It was probably a lot easier than you because there was a list of people who wanted a co-working space, but no one who was crazy enough to open one. So we opened our space and it filled up pretty quickly. But I'm like a technologist. I'm a designer. And I think I kind of backed myself into the office and backed myself into real estate. And there were a couple things that seemed really obvious. One is offices are pretty empty, even pre-COVID. Like they're not very busy. And the average desk is sat in too few hours for it to be really efficient. And we thought
That's
there was
funny.
an opportunity to create like a market and a marketplace for underutilized office. And we were way too early for that. But that's when
Yeah.
our brain really started to tick and think, man, if we put together a network of all these spaces, we can have the biggest co-working brand in the world, but not the same sort of capital and financial restraints than a traditional operator.
Like I said, you're a lot smarter than me. And so this is awesome that it worked out the way it did. No, this is so cool. So as you developed this model and started talking to the other co-working space owners, like, were they hesitant? Were they like, I don't know if I want to give up that kind of revenue? Or what was kind of the take on that?
Yeah, it was really interesting. So before this, what we pivoted from was software to manage a space like your old space. So the billing and the scheduling and that was hard to sell because there were lots of ways to solve that problem that didn't require like the cost of our platform.
Right.
But as co-working and flexible workspaces grew, there's a lot of empty space, and kind of like an airplane, the inventory is perishable. If it's empty for the day and you didn't sell it, you make no money.
You didn't make money. Yeah.
So for us, our proposition was, hey, you have empty space. Let us fill it. If we fill it, give us a cut. And if it's full, then don't put it on our platform. And that was actually so much easier to sell. And it was like one of those light bulb moments where I was like, oh, wait, this is so much easier to sell than what we were trying to sell before.
And yet the beautiful part about what you just said is that your product didn't change. You just changed the way you packaged it.
Which, yeah, I mean, it changed a bit, but like it was all a lot of the similar like DNA and underpinnings that allowed us to make that first change to really validate, hey, there's something here. It was easy to experiment. We knew a lot of people. We talked to a lot of spaces. So we had a lot of insight that we knew we were probably closer.
I am so glad you're here. And I just wanted to take a few seconds to tell you about a program that we have assembled with a lot of our podcast guests and a lot of people who are listening to the show who are feeling the same way that they do. There's a recurring theme. You'll hear a lot of these founders talk about, I couldn't have done it without my team. I couldn't have done it without a support group of peers. I couldn't have done it without having someone to talk to that understood my feeling of isolation as an operator of my business. You see, you're not alone. It is hard running a business, and it's even harder when you know you can't express all your deepest concerns and frustrations with your executive team. It makes them nervous. It gets them scared. You don't want scared people on your executive team. So where do you turn? The Captain's Council is where you turn. The Captain's Council, it is an organization that we are put together with podcast guests, as well as people who are listening who are in the same boat. You see, peers are the only ones that can give you the type of empathy, the type of advice that only a founder or operator know and understand. Go check it out at captainscouncil.com. I know you're going to love what you see there. We have put together an organizational structure that has small group settings, a global community of founders and operators, as well as monthly and quarterly in-person events. You're going to love what you see there. I can't wait for you to check it out and enjoy the rest of this episode. That's awesome. Well, but I mean, when I think a lot of people listening to this, they're kind of in this, honestly, our audience of this podcast is very much your client avatar. And so, when you're talking to people in that, say 1 to 20 million range in revenue companies, they all need spaces like this. Like everybody needs that stuff. But my point is when they listen to your story and how you went out to try and build this real estate venture and you backed into it and did all this stuff with your buying and building out the co-working and then thought, we are not just going to manage these guys' spaces, but we're going to actually just bring the clients in. I mean, that story in and of itself will solve so many problems for so many businesses in the scenario you were in. How do you help people identify that, guess what? The opportunity you're out there to solve, make one little tweak and you may be able to be a lot more successful.
It's a really interesting point. I think the business before this that really led to it, with all that pitching and all that interviewing, a lot of listening, like so much listening. And I think,
ooh, I like that.
Even if we couldn't we didn't go in to say, buy our product. Like we said, like, here's what we do. Like, what problems do you have? Right. And the problems we learned were not necessarily the problems we were solving. Right. And then, my partner at the time, Pat, he was like, ClassPass came up, and ClassPass was this similar concept for gyms. I get one membership, get access to lots of gyms. Right. And he said, what about this? And I think having the courage to try something new, having the courage to recognize, to experiment and say, I might be able to do this better and faster, and then being able to listen again to like the signals you get. I think like it's listen and be brave would be my motto here.
Sure. Wow. Well, listen and be brave is huge, but like the fact that you listened first and then were brave makes it a lot less difficult to be brave.
It helps. It definitely helps.
Right. I think oftentimes the biggest problem, and I'm guessing you see this all the time because of the people that are in your workspaces, but like too often they think they know the problem exactly and they're going to solve that problem. And yet they're not solving anyone's real problem. They're solving the problem they might've had, but not everyone else's problem. So explain how you listened and what kind of things were you hearing that made you think, maybe I need to tweak this.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, what are the biggest problems you have? Right. And if your problem isn't billing and scheduling and collecting money, which is what we focus on, it was like, well, how could we help you? And the problem was, well, I want to fill up the space and I'm not sure how, or I need help with the demand. And we thought, putting butts in seats was going to be an option that made sense. So we started small. We didn't start globally, right? We started with Chicago because it was like we already knew all the operators in Chicago. And there's a tagline. I don't know, it's Illinois tagline, but it's like if it makes it in Peoria, like Peoria, Illinois is like a great test market because if it works in Peoria, it's going to work in like Kansas City and St. Louis and like small. So there's something also, I think, the Chicago mentality, which is like if it works in New York City, it worked in New York City. If it works in San Francisco, it worked in San Francisco. I don't know if that means anything else other than that. If it works in Chicago, it might work. So we tried small. We went to our friends and said, hey, we have this concept. Would you be interested to get involved? And they said, yeah, let's give it a shot. And, the beginning, it was one product, one price. Now we have many products and many prices, and we've learned and we've iterated and tried to be bold and make changes as we go. But I think it was just, it was listening and then recognizing what are the tools we have like what levers do we have right now in front of us where we can try it.
I love it. All right. So taking a step back and looking at what you've built so far and what you've been able to generate in terms of growth and breadth of where you can offer this and things like that. Nobody's path is perfectly smooth. And you've already mentioned iteration and iterating and making changes. All that says to me is, yeah, dude, we totally screwed up here. We made this change and made it better there. Like, can you explore a couple of those things where you're like, oh my gosh, I didn't see that coming, but it made our product better?
Yeah. I mean, I think for us, like when we started, we had one product. It was priced, I think it was $200. It was $200 a month. No, it was $300 a month. And we were like, let's try a lower price. And every time we tried a lower price, we were able to get more sales, right? So it was like, there's a correlation between lowering the price and increasing sales. And then we kind of looked, and over time we looked at the economics and we're like, okay, well, we can sell these things, but we aren't making enough real return to drive enough value, right? So how can we change our pricing model? And so we've evolved, like our original business was a subscription product and the subscription model. And then we had to make a really hard decision to say, we're not going to be a subscription model. We're going to be a pay-as-you-go, on-demand model. And we learned a lot through that experience, right? We learned the economics changed, but customers were frustrated, like this psychological rule of loss aversion. That's real.
Right.
So we've always experimented with pricing, and by like what we sell and how we sell it, by experimenting with it, gathering feedback, positive or negative, and iterating. And we've done that across with pricing, our business model, who we sell, what we sell to.
That's a huge modifier though. I mean, when the whole market and the whole, I don't know what you have in your head regarding your exit strategy, but everyone says monthly recurring is what you've got to do. Why aren't you doing that? And to move away from that into more of a pay-as-you-go model, how do you justify that? And just in terms of your exit planning, like, what does that do to your multiple? And what does that do to the way you think about what that's going to look like?
It's a great question. I think specifically for what we sell and what we do, like you might know what coworking is, and this wonderful audience might as well. But I think like for most people, it's not something that they've tried before or use frequently or have involved in their life. And I think when you're trying to change behavior, when you're trying to introduce something new, our product's a pretty unique product, right? Like you have to get out of your house. You have to get in your car or on the train. You have to go past Starbucks, which is across the street, and the cool cafe a few blocks away with the cute barista that knows your name, and schlep to a co-working space. And there's a lot of barriers right there. And I think like for us, we think this is a blue ocean. We think that for most people, we're not competing. We're actually introducing them to something new. We're expanding the pie. And I think we believe that as we create more market adoption, as we bring more people in the front door, there are lots of opportunities to make more money. There's opportunities to create subscriptions and licensing and fees. But for us, because we're in this market making mode, we're in this blue ocean mode, we want to make it as accessible and easy for people to come in the front door and understand what we're selling. So I mean, what does that mean today for our multiple? It means it's probably a lower multiple than if we had consistent recurring revenue.
Sure.
But for me, it's like, how do you remove the barriers? And then you can always tweak your price. You can always add subscriptions. There's a million examples of that. People are proving they like our product every day by spending money on it. And I think that's what matters. And sometimes I don't like the dogma of like, you need to do it this way or you need a set. It's like, figure out what moves your metrics and your needle and like, you'll be better off than 90% of people trying.
I love it, dude. This is fantastic. I think this is so interesting. And I love the challenges that you've had to overcome to do what you're doing. And honestly, in your case, it's very brave to have made those pivots and the decisions and not knowing that people, I mean, just thinking as a fellow founder, it would freak me out that I'm sending people to a place that will likely try to upsell them on their monthly, Yeah. And that's a huge risk that you face.
Yeah, man. Yeah. I mean, but you have to like create a better product and create a better experience. And
I love it.
And I think that's what we're trying to do.
Awesome. I love it. Now, as you look at the model and the way that you've been able to pivot and adjust and modify, what advice do you give to other people that are struggling, that are like not struggling to launch, but maybe they're at a certain revenue and they're looking at it going, dude, we're making money, but like, how do I get there? You've clearly made some specific changes to get you past what you were, for example, in your own co-working space. What do you teach people when you're talking through that?
I'm at the risk of sounding a little redundant here.
Yeah.
You have to listen. You have to ask.
Yeah.
Like, you look at your data, obviously, but listen. Ask them. Ask your customers what problem you're solving and how you're solving that problem, and what is the context of that problem.
Right.
And try to understand the journey that you are, it's the jobs to be done sort of methodology. It's like, what job are you solving for your customers?
Totally.
And I think that's where you start. And then I think experiment. Like, I think a lot of companies and people get stagnant because they're scared to change. Right. Something's working. It's expensive to change. Totally. So, like, we really do believe in this, like, minimum viable, like, what is the least we need to try something new and experiment? And often we'll experiment with a pricing structure, a model, without building anything, just by saying, hey, if we built this, would you be a customer? And I think it gives you a lot of latitude. But if you're not asking the people who are buying your stuff, then I think you're doing it wrong. But if I'm wrong, please tell me, because there's another way to grow. That'd be great. And it's humbling. Like, often it's humbling. Asking people who, like, left your product, why? Yeah. And just saying, I'm not trying to upsell you. I'm not trying to bring you back in the front door. I just, honestly, I'm a CEO. I'm trying to run a company here. Like, and I'd like to improve. And if you could give me 15 minutes, like, totally, I'll buy you lunch. I don't know. Just tell me why, and learn. And that's how we do it, at least.
I love it. Fantastic advice. And the theme of today is listen to your customers. Don't think you know better than they do what they want.
And try and experiment.
Right.
Experiments.
Right.
Yeah.
I love it. Well, I rarely have met someone who's built a business without having someone in their corner, or a group, or someone that they've kind of leaned on and said, dude, do you think this is going to work? And they gave them some good advice. Is there someone you want to give a shout out to today that's kind of been there for you?
Yeah, there's like a lot of people. There's so many people in my life, in my orbit, that have supported me and listened to me and stood by me. I think one dude is a Chicago dude who is a marketer and a growth guy, and somebody that it's just other than being in my corner, and especially early on in the business, or B2C, just being such a great sport. There's a guy named Kenny Mazurski.
Nice.
And he's here in Chicago, and he's got a great little marketing shop. And if you ever need, like, especially B2C consumer brands, he's really worked on everything.
I love it.
Really great dude, great human. And as our business has evolved, he's evolved from, not just a really great marketer, but like a really great human that's had my back. So shout out to Kenny.
Love it. Kenny, thank you, sir. I love shout outs like that. Dude, so thank you so much for taking the time to be here today. We love your model, love what you're doing. I honestly just so impressed with how you made that tweak, because I'm looking back thinking, that's really smart. That was just so overwhelming, having that mortgage fee every month. I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
Right. Awesome.
Right place, right time. Yeah, and if we can ever be of service to anyone who's listening to this, like, aside from having the network, like, we talk to thousands of companies, small, medium, some of the biggest companies in the world, the federal government, and we help them figure out hybrid. And sometimes that means our platform. Sometimes it means go to Todd's old space directly. Don't worry about us. But, like, that's what we do for a living. So, like, to anyone who needs support on that, this is kind of the Wild West, and
love it.
We can help.
Love it. Fantastic. Well, I appreciate you so much. And for those listening, don't hesitate to leave some questions in the comments below. And I know that both of us are going to be intrigued to want to jump in there and answer what you guys are asking. So, Sam, thank you, sir.
Thanks, Todd.
I hope that you enjoyed that interview. I honestly had so much fun, and we had a great conversation post-interview about kind of the market and how important co-working is now and how much more important it's going to be moving forward. With all the people working from home, they need a place to meet. They need a conference room. They need a space to hold a training. This is one of the smartest ways to do it. And I love how he's leveraging other people's space to build something awesome for what it is. And I just think that fun interview, fun company, great model. I hope you learned some things from it. I know that I did, and I'm so grateful for the interview. If you haven't done so already either, I would highly suggest, with Sam, he had issues at the beginning of his business journey that kept him from growing and scaling the way that he wanted to. He was able to listen intently to his clients and discovered, hey, you know what? Let's try this, and let's move forward and grow. A lot of people have a hard time doing that. Well, we have an assessment that will help you identify what is working, what's not working with your business, and why you may or may not be growing. This is important because a lot of people can make money, but not a lot of people can grow and scale their business to a significant place where they can exit in a good way. So check out the Growth Readiness Assessment at growthreadiness.com. growthreadiness, growthreadiness.com. Check it out right now because it's free, doesn't cost you anything, and we're not going to solicit the heck out of you after you're done. We just really want to know what's keeping you from your growth and scaling adventure and what's holding you in launch mode. Because launching a business is great, but you got to graduate into growth and scaling at some point. What's keeping you from getting there? We'll see you on the Growth and Scaling podcast. Grateful you're here, and we'll see you on the next one.